Hey guys, I am Ibigandscary. I'm bringing you another StarCraft 2 replay, this time featuring ETERNiTYyosh in our bottom left corner, playing our red Protoss, and in the top right we have CharismA, our blue Zerg. Both players are in Masters. We are on Daybreak, and I think this is a ladder match, and this is fun. This is very fun. I like Protoss versus Zerg just because it's really in the Zerg's ballpark to make something happen for the first half of the game, and then it's really in Protoss's ballpark to make something happen in the second half of the game. So you can see where all the pressure is and how CharismA has to respond to it in the front half, because Yosh can pretty much easily do that Forge Fast expand to take that first expansion, and there's not much that CharismA can do to stop that. But if he can hold them on 2 base, if he can hold off any cheesy kind of tech play that Yosh might be doing, or any large all-in, CharismA can, take 3, 4, 5 bases pretty much unimpeded, and then all of a sudden Yosh has to decide, is he going to move out, is he going to crush this Zerg that's been taking way too much of an economy lead, or will he kind of sit back, re-macro, and try to take a third of his own? It's a very dynamic and very thought-provoking matchup. It's not just army after army slashing against each other. It's very much triage and having to decide, if the risk is really worth moving out. Speaking of moving out, that first probe's moving out from Probe's base, from Yosh's base. Oh man, it was such a good transition too. It was a great transition, and I screwed it up. Pylons down for Yosh on the low ground. He's definitely going to do that Forge Fast expand sort of thing. And from the placement, it's a farther away from the Nexus than you sometimes see, so it'll be incorporated in that wall off, because this is pretty much the most narrow place. The probe is pulling a little bit of shenanigans back at home, but with its shields and both players being Masters, I really don't expect that probe to go down just from some drone harassment from CharismA. CharismA is throwing down a spawning pool first, so he's going to have out some Zerglings. Maybe he's expecting a pylon block to go down from Yosh, and that is pretty much totally standard. He doesn't quite have the money for it just now, and it looks like CharismA is going to get the money first, as long as the probe production stays constant for Yosh. Speaking of production, Nexus is already being built by Yosh. Threw that up before the Forge goes down. That's going to be scouted by the Overlord, so the Zerglings that will be coming out a little bit quicker, since that pool came down first, will definitely have something to put their backs into. They're probably going to waste some time on the probe pylon, which was thrown down by the probe, and that's probably going to buy Yosh enough time to get off his wall. You can see that he's already thrown down that gateway and Forge, probably going to be followed by a cybernetics core as soon as that gateway is done. So the Zerglings are wasting a little bit of time on the pylon, but in all honesty, Daybreak is such a long map. You can look down on the mini-map, and with the destructible debris there, they have to take a long pathway home, and so those Zerglings probably weren't going to arrive in time to get there. And in fact, Yosh just being even more cautious, throwing down a gateway just to complete that wall off, just in case some extra Zerglings were on their way. Nexus is almost totally finished right whenever the hatchery gets built, and we don't see any gas out of Yosh, out of CharismA just yet. We're going to see that being grabbed shortly, but oh wow, a third being grabbed just because I guess Yosh didn't throw down a pylon. This is totally a very natural and effective way to deal with Protoss being able to grab a third. I like how Yosh canceled one of the gateways as soon as he saw that the pressure wasn't forthcoming from CharismA, allowing him to throw down a pylon instead and leave a small gap open so you can get those immortals out later on. Not the biggest deal whenever it just comes to gateway units, because you can warp them in on the other side, but at this level of play you definitely need to be able to keep your units safe behind this wall and have the possibility to move out. And with a single zealot being built from the gateway, he will be able to block off that small hole with his body pretty easily, and with only a handful of Zerglings out on the field, Yosh doesn't have to worry about any sort of run-by shenanigans. He knows that the natural has definitely gone up, and can probably suspect the third, since he's not seeing any pokes from the Zerglings just yet. Still no gas, but that's totally standard. With that third being taken, you definitely need the added income of the minerals so that you can get out plenty more Zerglings. Nice reactions there from Yosh, getting the probe in position as soon as he saw that those Zerglings were going to run by his Zealot. He didn't try to move his Zealot back to block the hole because it was too late, and there's not a lot of that these Zerglings can do to take down that Zealot. Zealot can definitely take 3 Zerglings. with very minimal damage being done to him. 2 gas just now being grabbed by CharismA. He's going to start on that Zergling speed, which is oh so important on a map of this side, as well as a Roach Warren and Evo Chamber being thrown down. Evo Chamber, will be interesting to see what type of upgrades can come out of that, but it's also possible that since he's not stopped Protoss from grabbing 2 bases, which means he's going to have a lot of gas and a lot of time to get out some weird tech. Drop play is not out of the question. Air play, something out of a Stargate, definitely not out of the question. Map of this size, Phoenixes can be incredibly devastating. Catching a couple of Overlords that are away from home, and you can see that CharismA is really spreading out his Overlords in all sorts of different positions, getting some really nice map awareness that Protoss is going to find very annoying whenever he does decide to move out with whatever he decides to move out with. Good control from Yosh again with the Stalker, taking a little bit of hull damage, but beginning to whittle down the handful of Zerglings that are chasing him down. It looks like all 4 of them will go down, and while that Stalker did take hull damage, remember, half of his health are shields, so it's not like the end of the world that it took just a little bit of hull damage. Back to infrastructure for Yosh, which is actually getting scattered out by CharismA. A nice timing there, CharismA. We think a like Twilight Council going down, as well as a robotics facility, so maybe some blink play. Maybe that's just for higher upgrades, or maybe he's going to go for some High Templar. Time will tell. This is also rather telling with the other 2 gas being grabbed and not a ridiculous amount of gateways going down, just the 4. I think we're going to see some higher tech coming out of Yosh just because it's just 4 gateways plus a single robotics facility. He's going to have some extra gas left over, extra gas that he can throw into the forge to take some higher upgrades, as well as some of the more costly units coming out of the robotics facility. Definitely Immortals. Probably going to see some Colossus, as long as CharismA doesn't stay exclusively on the Roaches. Immortals definitely a better choice against those, but with the Infestor Pit going down, I suspect we'll see definitely a change up once CharismA decides, if Yosh is going for that Immortal Zealot Sentry mix that we see, and it's pretty classic. Roach is probably not going to be the most cost-effective choice, and a Zergling Infestor army can definitely lay havoc, especially if you can get some lucky fungal growths down on the delicate sentries. Suiciding in another Overseers. Very curious about what's going on. I mean, you see that Twilight Council, you really don't want to see a Dark Templar shrine going up, or even a High Templar shrine. It's a bad mojo to see that sort of thing built, but with Blink being researched, maybe he'll feel a little bit better. You can see the chrono boost on that. Also, 4 sentries already out on the field, and a warp prism being built from the robotics facility, so probably a drop play coming out of Yosh, which is not a bad idea at all with Zerg taking 3 bases, and we don't see any static defenses back at home at the lair. A lot of damage can be done very, very quickly with a well-placed drop, and the Roaches, yes, they have speed, and speed is almost completely researched. They'll be able to react very quickly, but we can see that there's no creep spread connecting any of the bases, which will definitely slow down those Roaches. And with the army completely afield, and this Warp Prism moving off with 4 sentries loaded up, and you know what, sentries not the most heavy DPS damage in the world, but they do have the ability to force field mineral lines, and if you throw a force field here, here, and here, you can block off the escape of all of those drones, take them down completely, and the only thing you have to worry about is the queen. So I suspect that at this level of play, that's exactly what Yosh is intending to do, and it can be incredibly devastating. What type of workers? We're at 0 for 0, so I'm going to keep an eye on both of these armies. CharismA is dropping down his sentries. There goes those 2 force fields, 3rd force field too, capturing all of these drones. You can see that 5, 6 have gone down. 9, 10, and now 11. Roach is just now arriving. Instant pickup from Yosh as he retreats, knowing that he's done quite a bit of damage. I mean, the economy, 52 over 66. Both of them are on 3 bases. CharismA definitely needs to get back that economic lead, because there's not a lot that he can do to prevent Yosh from just powerhousing off of this. I mean, he's completed this wall off here. He's got plenty of gateways to protect his photon cannons back at home, and with so many sentries out on the field, these 4 as well as the 4 that are in the warp prism, multiple force fields are going to be able to prevent CharismA from overrunning this base very easily, and he's going to have to waste a lot of minerals just to prevent that 3rd, but that 3rd really can't stay up for very long. CharismA either needs to take maybe even a 5th base, or switch over to some sort of tech that will prove to be a little bit easier at containing Yosh, because right now there's not a lot to contain Yosh. He can fly around wherever he wants to with that Warp Prism. But again, that placement from those Overlords by Charisma are really proving to be quite a boon to him. I mean, he's covered pretty much every angle of attack, and Yosh is going to have a hard time attacking there. With it being scouted, Charisma is repositioning his units to protect down at the third, as well as throwing up quite a lot of spores, which will definitely prevent Yosh from attacking there, because if it's scouted, those sentries do go down very quickly. Spire is about to pop for Charisma, so he'll have a couple Corruptors on the field, maybe hunt down that Warp Prism, and you've got to be careful because that represents quite a lot of gas and quite a lot of energy that can play into these later fights. These Immortals are not very good if they get completely surrounded by roaches and cut down on them almost instantly. That's going to be the next coming fight is probably going to be very large, because Charisma is going to be feeling like he can force the engagement, because he really doesn't have to worry too much about that Warp Prism anymore. Look at all that static defenses. Very impressive. Hive is also being built, as well as a Stargate back at home. Just the single Stargate. I don't think this is going to be a heavy Stargate play anytime soon. We'll probably see another one before that happens. But he does have quite a lot of gas. Yosh is almost floating 1,000 gas, which will probably be poured into Archons later on. But that Stargate is probably so that Yosh can start working on that mothership, or just higher tech in general. And it's always good to have that possibility, even if you don't play Zerg. You want to have the ability to switch over to a different tech that might prove to be more useful. Charisma is moving in with his Roaches, his Zerglings. This is a really nice unit composition, but it's not very I mean, it's well-rounded, but it's not very intimidating looking. The Roaches are going to get cut to pieces by the Immortals, but Yosh doesn't have a huge force. Some nice feedback on the Infestors. I don't know if you caught it from the High Templars, but just one or two storms and the just sheer number of Roaches is more than enough to push Yosh back. But here we can see the power of all those force fields. I mean, look at all those sentries. It's so hard for Charisma to even engage this force because of all of those sentries, and they have quite a lot of energy on them. And Yosh is feeling so powerful that he can actually push forward with his numerically inferior force and kind of bully Charisma. Charisma would love to push in and actually engage this, but he was afraid that was going to happen right there. A nice force field from Yosh, cutting off half of Charisma's Roaches and allowing him to attack with very little to fear from the Infestors, as well as the other half of the Roaches. Now all of a sudden, Sentries and Stalkers outnumber the Roaches. A bad blink from Yosh, blinking forward, losing half of his Stalkers, but still the sheer number of Sentries that are on the field allow him to push back Charisma. He did lose that fourth base, which is not so good, but he did blow a large portion of Charisma's Roaches, to the point now that the supplies are pretty much even. And remember, there was about a 30 or 40 supply lead for Charisma at the start of this force. So Yosh is probably going to be feeling pretty good about that engagement. He didn't come out ahead on the units lost tab, but remember, he's got that Warp Prism positioned in the bottom right corner to make something happen. And really, the time goes on, Yosh is going to be getting in better and better shape for that endgame. I mean, he's got multiple Immortals that are out on the field. He's got that Stargate. All he needs to do is throw down that Fleet Beacon, bam, so that he can get out the mothership. I wouldn't be surprised if he's another step ahead of me and already has a mothership out, and I just don't even know it. No, he does not. Okay, good. Warp Prism's finally jerking into action, throwing down all four of those sentries, but it looks like he's going to be relying on Zealots to actually do the damage needed. Unfortunately, the entire force of Charisma was located up by that fourth, and is going to quickly reposition down here. Not in time to save the hatchery, but it looks like in time to kill everything down here. All of the sentries die very quickly. At the same time, Yosh is using that momentary distraction to push in and actually poke out the eye of Yosh for the fourth. So with the minor engagement going on down by the fifth, it looks like the fourth is in quite a lot of trouble. Yeah, there's a lot of spines there, but Yosh will only have to engage one or two of them to actually take out that hatchery, which is not so good for Charisma. It looks like everything that survived down the bottom right corner, maybe even another warp-in from that warp prism, has allowed Yosh to kind of reinforce this force and push in. Broodlords are out on the field. 4 more are being warped in, but not enough to take out this force. It looks like Yosh is trying to bait him out into the open. I don't think he should pull back completely. He still definitely has a numerically superior force, and if you can get those Broodlords out in the open, his Sentries and Stalkers should be more than enough to actually cut them down. Quite a lot of anti-air representing here, especially with the blink ability. Oh, but he's got to be worried about this. Quite a lot of Zealots, Zerglings on the back of that. Another little push here, but he's got to be careful without the mothership there throw down a Archon toilet. Oh, a nice blink underneath all the Broodlords. Exactly what happened is what he was hoping. All the Broodlords had moved forward. They were so well protected up on this cliff. Now only 2 of them remain to throw down some fire. Another quick blink from the Stalkers. They're taking so much damage and so many loss, but now the resources loss tab has swung in the favor of Yosh, and some nice force fields once again, incorporating the mineral fields into the force fields is great play, as well as using the buildings of Charisma against them. The other 3 Broodlords, another quick blink. I wonder how he's getting that scattered. He's got to have an observer in this force. Another supporting wave of Stalkers. Yosh is just throwing wave after wave into this, and they're coming from the really well placed proxy pylons. So close. But look at that, 80 over 170 supply and Charisma. Noob. Oh, poor guy. He was doing so well. He had such a great build. I mean, he had some nice Broodlords out on the field. He had good tech. He didn't have a terrible economy at all. He just lost so much trying to defend this. Maybe he could have just let it go down, pull back. I mean, he's got so much money in the bank. He could massive production of Corruptors and Broodlords, and probably could deal with this force eventually. I mean, 170 over 80 supplies, pretty rough, but the majority of the loss of the supplies came from him throwing unit after unit into Yosh's army. And I guess the repositioning of the Broodlords didn't help much, but that was mostly Yosh's good play rather than Charisma's bad play. And remember, Yosh is grabbing another base, and this was just going to spiral out of control. I'm also spiraling out of control because you guys watch my videos and my ego is enormous. I'm not gonna lie. If you guys have a video you want me to cast, you could PM me here or on Reddit, one way or another. I will see you guys later. I am Big and Scary. Bye.